Amaka, stopped looking at the mirror at night, her grandmother warned. Amaka's eyes turned to the mirror, even though it was still facing the wall. And then slowly the mirror began to turn by itself with a demonic laugh. Her mouth went dry. Her legs felt frozen. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The mirror stopped turning when it faced her. At first, she saw nothing, just darkness. But then a face appeared. It looked like her, but the eyes were glowing red, and the mouth was stretched into a wide, evil grin. She blinked, and just like that, the mirror was empty again. But she knew what she saw, and now it had seen her too. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it might break her chest. Her breath came in short gasps. She ran to her grandmother's room screaming. The small village of Umeshe was quiet and peaceful, surrounded by tall trees and narrow paths. Everyone knew each other, and news traveled fast. But there was one thing the villagers never joked about: the mirror in the dark. For generations, it was said that if you looked into a mirror at night, something terrible would happen. They said the mirror wasn't just glass, it was a window, and what looked back at you was not always your reflection. Amaka was a very young and beautiful woman. Her skin was smooth like palm oil, and her long black hair touched her back like flowing water. Men came from faraway villages just to see her, but she only smiled and walked past them. Amaka lived with her grandmother, Mama Ugo, who was the oldest woman in the village. Mama Ugo had seen many things and told many stories, but her voice always changed when she spoke about the mirror. One evening, as the moon rose high and the crickets sang, Mama Ugo called Amaka into her room. "My child," she said in a low, serious voice, "never look into the mirror when the sun is gone. Promise me." Amaka laughed softly. "Mama, it's just a mirror. I use it to check my face." But Mama Ugo's eyes were sharp. "Listen to me, Amaka. In this village, the mirror is not just for beauty. It can show things that live in the dark, things that want to come through. Promise me you won't look." Amaka gave a small nod, more to end the talk than to agree. She thought it was just another old story, like the ones Mama Ugo told to scare children. But as the wind howled outside and the night deepened, the warning stayed in her mind. What could be so dangerous about looking into a mirror? Why were the villagers so afraid? The questions danced around in her head, but curiosity was beginning to grow inside her, like a small fire. That night, as she lay in bed, the full moon shone through her window, casting light on the small mirror on her table. Amaka turned her face to the wall trying to sleep, but the mirror seemed to call to her, soft and silent. She didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change forever. The next morning, the village was alive with noise. Women pounded yam, children chased goats, and men headed to the farm. Amaka went about her chores quietly, but her mind kept returning to the mirror. It was strange. She had looked into mirrors all her life. Why did Mama Ugo sound so afraid? Could a mirror really show something evil? She shook her head, trying to forget about it, but the thought stayed in her heart like a stone at the bottom of a river. Later that afternoon, Amaka went to the stream with her friends. They washed clothes and gossiped about the boys who followed them. Her friend Ngozi, who had a sharp tongue and a loud laugh, noticed Amaka was quiet. "What is wrong with you today?" Ngozi asked. Amaka hesitated, then told them what Mama Ugo had said about the mirror. Her friends all stopped talking. The laughter faded. "Your grandmother is right," whispered Obianuju, the shyest of the group. "My aunt once looked into a mirror at midnight. The next day, she couldn't talk again. Her mouth stayed open like she was screaming, but no sound came out." Ngozi rolled her eyes. "These are just old stories. I've looked in a mirror at night before. Nothing happened to me," but even she didn't sound too sure. On the way home, the sky grew dark fast. A strong wind blew through the trees, and dry leaves danced across the ground. Amaka pulled her wrapper tighter around her body and hurried home. As she walked, she thought she heard a voice, soft like a whisper, carried on the wind.
I can see you.
Amaka froze. She looked around, but the path was empty. The trees swayed and the wind continued to blow. When she reached home, Mama Ugo was waiting outside, staring at the path like she had been expecting something. You must be careful, Amaka, she said without smiling. The wind speaks to those the mirror has chosen. Amaka frowned. What do you mean, Mama? But her grandmother said nothing more. She just went inside and locked the door. That night, Amaka lit a candle in her room. The mirror stood in the corner, quiet and still. She turned it to face the wall, but deep inside, a strange feeling had already taken root. She didn't know it, but something had already seen her. Amaka didn't sleep well that night. She kept tossing and turning, waking up at every sound. The candle had long burned out, and her room was dark except for the light of the moon slipping through the window. Each time she opened her eyes, her gaze went to the mirror, even though it was turned toward the wall. Something about it made her chest feel tight, like something was watching her from the other side. By morning, her eyes were heavy with sleep, and her hands shook slightly as she carried water to the kitchen. Mama Ugo watched her closely. Did you turn the mirror to the wall like I told you? She asked. Amaka nodded. Yes, Mama, but I don't understand why. What is it about the mirror? Mama Ugo sighed and sat down on the wooden stool. When I was a young girl, just like you, I also looked. Only once. And I saw a woman in white. She looked just like me, but her eyes were all black. She smiled at me with blood in her teeth. Amaka's mouth dropped open. You never told me this before. Mama Ugo nodded slowly. Because some things are better forgotten, but now the mirror is calling again. It hasn't done that in years. Amaka frowned. How do you know it's calling? Her grandmother looked her in the eyes and said, Because I heard it in the wind. And now, you have too. Later that evening, Amaka stayed in her room, trying to ignore the strange feeling in her chest. She read a book, sang softly to herself, and tried not to glance at the mirror. But as night crept in and silence took over the house, the air in the room changed. It became cold, cold enough for her to see her breath. The lamp beside her flickered, then went out. Amaka's eyes turned to the mirror, even though it was still facing the wall, and then slowly the mirror began to turn, by itself, with a demonic laugh. Her mouth went dry. Her legs felt frozen. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The mirror stopped turning when it faced her. At first she saw nothing, just darkness. But then, a face appeared. It looked like her, but the eyes were glowing red, and the mouth was stretched into a wide, evil grin. Amaka blinked, and just like that, the mirror was empty again. But she knew what she saw, and now it had seen her too. Amaka sat frozen, staring at the mirror. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it might break her chest. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. She rubbed her eyes quickly, hoping she was just dreaming. But the mirror stayed still, reflecting nothing but her candle-lit room. The face she had seen, her face but not her, was gone. She jumped from her bed and ran into Mama Ugo's room, screaming. The old woman sat upright, as if she had been waiting. You saw it, didn't you? She asked. Amaka nodded, tears running down her cheeks. It looked like me, but its eyes were red, and it smiled. It smiled at me, Mama. Mama Ugo rose from her bed and wrapped a shawl around Amaka's shoulders. It has started. I prayed it wouldn't choose you, but it has. Amaka couldn't believe what she was hearing. Choose me for what? She asked, trembling. To cross over, Mama Ugo whispered. That spirit lives in the mirror, but it needs a body to return to the world. It chooses people who are curious, who don't listen. It tricks them, and then takes their place. Amaka felt sick. Her legs were weak, and her throat was dry. What can I do? She asked. Mama Ugo looked at her with tired eyes. You must not look at it again. No matter what you hear, no matter what you see, do not face the mirror. Cover it with a white cloth and put palm oil and salt at the corners. We will go and see the older woman tomorrow. Back in her room, Amaka did as she was told. She covered the mirror with a white wrapper and placed bowls of palm oil and salt at each corner of the table. She tried to sleep, but her mind was racing. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw that smile again. That same smile. Too wide, too sharp. Just after midnight, she was woken by a voice. It was her own voice. Software. Sweet. Amaka, Why are you hiding? Don't you want to know who I am? Come look again. She held her blanket tightly, refusing to open her eyes. The air grew cold. The mirror began to hum, a low sound like buzzing bees. And then came the laugh. It was hers, but twisted, echoing through the room. And Amaka knew the spirit wasn't done with her yet. By sunrise, Amaka's eyes were red from lack of sleep. She had stayed up all night, covering her ears and humming songs to drown out the voice from the mirror. The white cloth covering it remained untouched, but she could still feel the presence behind it, watching, waiting. As soon as the morning light broke through the trees, Mama Ugo and Amaka set off for the oldest woman hut deep in the forest. The villagers rarely visited her unless something was very wrong. They walked in silence, Amaka clutching a small calabash filled with salt and kola nuts, an offering for protection. The path to the old woman's home was narrow and quiet, with thick bushes on both sides. Birds chirped above them, but even their song felt distant. After nearly an hour of walking, they reached a small hut built with red mud and a roof made of palm leaves. Smoke rose gently from a small fire outside. The air smelled of herbs and incense. The old woman, Iyaji, stepped out. Her skin was dark and smooth, and her eyes were sharp like a hawk's. She wore white cloth wrapped around her body and beads around her neck and ankles. "You came late," Iyaji said before Mama Ugo could speak. "The spirit has already touched her." Amaka's heart sank. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to look. I didn't know." The old woman looked at her with pity. "The mirror doesn't care if you meant to. It only cares that you did. Now, it has seen you." Mama Ugo handed the offering to the old woman, who took it and walked into the hut. "Come," she said, "we must begin the cleansing." Inside, the room was filled with thick smoke and dried leaves. Strange carvings covered the walls. Yaji sat Amaka down and tied red thread around her wrists. She began to chant in a language Amaka didn't understand. The flames of the fire danced, and a strong wind blew through the room, even though the windows were shut. After a while, the old woman opened her eyes and looked directly at Amaka. "This spirit is not like the others. It wants your face, your voice, your life. You must fight it. If you look into that mirror again, even for 1 second, it will take your place." Amaka nodded, but deep down she was afraid, because something inside her still wanted to look. When Amaka returned from the forest with Mama Ugo, the sun was already slipping behind the trees. Her body felt heavy, not just from the long walk, but from the weight of everything she had learned. The old woman's words repeated in her mind like a drumbeat. "If you look into that mirror again, it will take your place." That night, they locked all the windows and lit protective herbs, just like the old woman instructed. Mama Ugo placed herbs at every corner of the room and drew strange chalk symbols around the mirror, which was still covered in white cloth. Everything seemed quiet again. For the first time in days, Amaka felt like she might sleep in peace. But just as she was about to drift off, a sharp pain shot through her arm. She cried out and sat up, holding her wrist. There beneath the red thread the old woman had tied around her was a mark, round, black, and shaped like a mirror. Her skin burned where it appeared, and it pulsed like a second heartbeat. Mama Ugo rushed in. Her face went pale when she saw the mark. "It has marked you," she whispered, kneeling beside the bed. "The spirit has left its sign. This means it is getting stronger. It's not just inside the mirror anymore. It's starting to live here." Amaka's heart dropped. "Can't we remove it? Wash it off?" Mama Ugo shook her head. "Mark isn't on your skin. It's on your spirit. Only the spirit itself can release you, and it won't do that unless it finds another to take." All through the night, Amaka sat awake, staring at the covered mirror. She felt dizzy, like something was pulling at her thoughts. She tried to hum her favorite songs, but her own voice began to sound strange to her ears. Slightly deeper, slightly slower, almost like it wasn't her voice anymore. Then, just before dawn, the mirror began to shake beneath the cloth. Softly at first, then harder, and then the cloth slipped to the ground. The mirror stood bare, and in its center, her reflection was already waiting, smiling wider than ever. Amaka stared at the uncovered mirror, too afraid to move. Her reflection stood still inside it, but something was wrong. The girl in the glass looked like her, yes, but her eyes were too wide, her smile too long, and her head tilted slightly to the side, like a doll with a broken neck. It didn't blink. It didn't breathe, but it was alive. Mama Ugo ran into the room, her wrapper half-tied. "Don't look at it," she shouted, grabbing a scarf and covering the mirror again. She forced Amaka to look away and pulled her close. "That thing is not you. It's a shadow, a spirit that takes the face of its victim. The longer you look, the more power it gets." Amaka felt cold all over. "But it didn't wait for me to uncover it," she whispered. "It removed the cloth on its own." Mama Ugo's hands trembled. "Then it is stronger than I feared. Spirits that can touch the living world like that are old. Very old. This one has been trapped for a long time and is desperate to break free." The mark on Amaka's wrist burned again. It throbbed with pain, and she winced. Mama Ugo fetched a small bottle of oil from her cupboard and rubbed it gently on the mark. "This will slow it down," she said, "but not for long. We must go back to Yaji and tell her what has happened." As the morning broke, strange things began to happen in the village. A child looked into a pot of water and screamed. She said she saw a woman smiling back at her. A young man saw his shadow move when he was standing still. And in the market, 3 mirrors cracked at the same time without anyone touching them. The villagers whispered, "Something has come. An evil spirit walks again. It is the curse of the mirror." Amaka sat alone in her room staring at her hands. She didn't feel like herself anymore. Her voice still worked. Her face looked the same. But deep inside, she felt like something was changing. Something was slowly being pulled away from her. And in the mirror, hidden beneath the cloth, the spirit waited patiently, because it knew. Amaka's curiosity wasn't gone. It was only growing. That night, Amaka tried to sleep, but her eyes refused to close. Even though the mirror was covered, she still felt its pull like a hand gently tapping at her thoughts. When she finally drifted into sleep, it wasn't peaceful. Her dreams were dark and strange. She stood in a long hallway made entirely of mirrors. The floor, the walls, even the ceiling reflected her image. But every reflection looked slightly different. One was crying, another laughing. One had no eyes and one wore that same red-eyed smile she had seen before. Amaka turned to run, but her feet wouldn't move. It was like the glass beneath her was glue. Suddenly, all the mirrors shattered at once, except one. And in that one mirror, she saw herself, but it wasn't her. The reflection stepped out of the glass and stood before her. "Why do you hide me?" it asked, voice slow and heavy like thick smoke. "We are the same. I only want what you already have." Amaka screamed and woke up with a jolt. Sweat soaked her wrapper, and her pillow was wet with tears. The mark on her wrist had grown darker, almost like ink soaking into her skin. She rushed to Mama Ugo's room, who was already awake, boiling herbs. "You saw it, didn't you?" Mama Ugo asked without turning. "In your dream?" Amaka nodded slowly. "It spoke to me. It said it wanted my life. It wants to be me." Mama Ugo sighed and dropped some bitter leaves into the pot. "The dreams are just the beginning. That's how it gets inside your mind. Once it feels strong enough, it will try to switch places with you. One morning, you will look into the mirror, and it will be standing here, and you will be trapped on the other side." A chill ran through Amaka's spine. "Can we destroy the mirror?" she asked quickly. "Smash it?" Mama Ugo turned and gave her a long look. "If you destroy the mirror now, it won't kill the spirit. It will free it. And once it walks this earth without a glass prison, no one in this village will be safe." Amaka looked at the door to her room, and the mirror behind it seemed to laugh in silence. The next day, the village was quiet in a strange way. Even the birds refused to sing. People walked quickly, speaking in hushed tones. A cold wind blew through the trees, even though it was supposed to be a warm season. Something was wrong, and the whole village could feel it. As Amaka helped Mama Ugo gather herbs near the edge of the forest, they heard the sound of crying. It was coming from the old well behind Papa Naji's compound. They rushed there and found a little boy sitting on the ground, hugging his knees, tears running down his cheeks. "What's wrong?" Mama Ugo asked gently. The boy looked up slowly. "I saw myself in the water," he said. "But it wasn't me. It told me to jump. It said my real body is in the well." Amaka gasped. Mama Ugo knelt and placed a hand on the boy's head. Did you jump? She whispered. The boy shook his head quickly. I ran away, but when I got home, my mother said I was already there, sleeping in bed. But that wasn't me. That one didn't speak. It just stared at the wall. The women looked at each other, fear written all over their faces. The mirror spirit wasn't staying in the mirror anymore. It was moving. That night, Mama Ugo told Amaka to pack a small bag. We must leave before the spirit grows stronger, she said. If we go to the sacred hills, the guardian there may know how to trap it again. Amaka hesitated. But what if it follows us? She asked. Mama Ugo looked into her eyes. Then we'll make our stand there. I will not let it take you, my child. As they prepared to leave, the mirror in Amaka's room rattled loudly under the cloth. The bowl of salt beside it cracked. The red thread on her wrist snapped without anyone touching it. And then the mirror spoke. Not in a whisper this time, but in a voice as clear as thunder.
You can run, Amaka. You are already mine.
Amaka's heart slammed against her chest when she heard the mirror speak. It wasn't her voice this time. It was deeper, colder, like the sound of something ancient crawling through her soul. Mama Ugo didn't waste a second. She grabbed a sack of herbs, wrapped Amaka's small bag in cloth, and flung it over her shoulder. Don't look at it, Mama Ugo warned. Not even a glance. Keep your eyes forward and your spirit strong. But Amaka already did. They left before dawn, moving through the narrow footpaths behind the village. The sky was gray and the wind followed them, whistling like a warning. The trees seemed to bend in strange ways, and every time Amaka blinked, she felt like someone or something was walking behind them, just out of sight. Where are we going exactly? Amaka whispered. To the sacred hills of Ndumoki, Mama Ugo replied. There is an old hill there, where mirrors were once made to trap spirits like this one. The hills are protected by the earth itself. If we can reach it, we might be able to bind the spirit before it crosses fully. As they walked, Amaka began to feel weak. Her legs trembled and her chest felt heavy. She sat down on a rock to rest, her breath coming in short gasps. It's inside me, she said, eyes wide with fear. It's crawling through my veins. Mama Ugo knelt beside her and pulled out a small gourd filled with bitter water. She poured a little into Amaka's mouth. Drink. It will slow it down. We don't have much time. Every step we take, the spirit follows closer. It knows where you are. Suddenly, a figure appeared on the path ahead. It was a young woman about Amaka's age wearing a white wrapper. Her face looked familiar. Too familiar. It was Amaka, but her skin was pale, her eyes glowing faint red, and her smile, that terrible smile. She raised a hand and pointed at them.
You don't belong in that body. You gave it to me the moment you looked,
she said, voice echoing with two tones. Then she vanished, not like a human disappearing into the bush, but like smoke curling into the air. Mama Ugo stood up slowly, gripping Amaka's arm tightly. We must hurry, she whispered. And so they ran, chased by something that wore Amaka's face. The sacred hills were still far away, and every step Amaka took felt heavier than the last. The forest grew darker, even though it was still morning. The sun struggled to break through the thick clouds above, and the shadows between the trees began to move strangely, like they had minds of their own. Mama Ugo didn't speak much. She just kept moving, muttering prayers under her breath and sprinkling white chalk on the ground behind them. To confuse it, she explained, spirits follow footprints. This will scatter your trail. Amaka could barely walk. The mark on her wrist had spread, now creeping up her arm like a vine. Her fingers tingled, and sometimes they moved without her control. Once she even slapped herself without meaning to. Her own body was starting to betray her. As they climbed a small hill to rest, Mama Ugo handed her a pouch of ashen salt. Keep this close to your chest, she said. If the spirit tries to enter fully, this might burn it back. But only once. Use it wisely. Suddenly, the trees around them began to shake, even though there was no wind. The ground felt like it was humming. Amaka grabbed Mama Ugo's hand tightly. It's near, she whispered. Then they heard footsteps, soft but many, like a crowd was walking through the forest. From between the trees, dark figures appeared. Men and women, all wearing white, all with faces that looked wrong. Some had empty eye sockets. Others had long tongues that dragged the ground. They walked slowly, surrounding the hill. The lost ones, Mama Ugo whispered. Those who were taken before. Their spirits now served the mirror. Amaka and Mama Ugo stood back to back, holding their herbs and charms. The mirror people did not speak. They only stared. Their mouths opened, wide and slow, but no sound came out. Then in the middle of the silent crowd, she appeared again, the mirror version of Amaka. She looked perfect from far away, but as she stepped closer, her feet didn't touch the ground. Her face flickered like candlelight. Her eyes locked with Amaka's.
Give it to me. Give me what is mine.
Amaka reached into her wrapper and held the ash salt pouch tightly. I will never be yours, she said. The spirit smiled. We'll see. The mirror version of Amaka stepped forward, floating just above the ground. Her eyes were like burning coals, and the smile on her face never moved. Around her, the mirror people circled slowly, their arms hanging like dead branches, their mouths stretched wide with silent screams. Mama Ugo grabbed a handful of bitter leaves and threw them at the mirror people. They hissed and backed away, their skin bubbling where the leaves touched. Now, she shouted, use the ash. Amaka's hand trembled as she brought out the small pouch. The spirit that looked like her was only a few steps away now. Her voice was calm but filled with power. You don't need to run. Just give in. I can wear your face better than you ever could. Amaka's fear turned to anger. You're not me, she said, raising the pouch high. You're nothing but a shadow. Then she threw the ash and salt right at the spirit's face. There was a flash of light so bright it lit up the forest like midday. A loud scream filled the air, not just from the spirit, but from the entire group of mirror people. Their bodies shook, twisted, and melted into the ground like wax in fire. The forest went silent. Amaka fell to her knees, panting. The mark on her arm was still there, but the burning had stopped. Mama Ugo rushed to her and held her close. You did well, she said, her voice shaking. You pushed it back. For now. For now? Amaka asked, looking up. Mama Ugo nodded slowly. That ash only burns it. It doesn't kill it. It will return. Stronger. We still have to reach the sacred hills before nightfall. Once the moon rises, its power grows. Amaka stood, legs wobbling beneath her. Then let's go, she said, her voice filled with fear, but also something new. Strength. As they walked away from the burned clearing, neither of them noticed that one of the shattered figures was slowly rebuilding itself behind a tree. The spirit wasn't gone. It had only stepped back, waiting for the right moment to strike again. And this time, it wouldn't come alone. By late afternoon, the forest gave way to a small clearing with a narrow river running through it. The water was still and dark, almost like glass. The path to the sacred hills lay just beyond it, but Mama Ugo stopped and stared at the water with caution. This river is not ordinary, she warned. It's called Odo Ncheta, the river of reflections. It mirrors the soul, not the body. If your heart is weak, it will show you things you cannot handle. Many who crossed never came out the same. Amaka looked at the river nervously. The surface shimmered like a mirror, and she could already see her reflection, though she hadn't stepped close. Her mirrored self didn't blink. It stood completely still, even when she moved her hand. We can't go around it? Amaka asked. No, Mama Ugo said. We must cross it, but you must not look into it for long. Keep your eyes down, your spirit strong, and whatever you hear, do not answer. They stepped carefully into the shallow water. It was cold and sent chills up Amaka's spine. As they moved forward, the water barely made a sound, but voices began to whisper from below. Amaka, she stopped. That voice, it was her mother's. Her real mother, who had died when she was a baby. Amaka, it's me. Don't you want to see me? Just look down. Amaka's eyes filled with tears. Her legs froze in place. Mama, she whispered. Mama Ugo grabbed her arm sharply. That is not your mother. Keep walking. But the voice grew louder. I miss you. I've been waiting for you in the mirror. Come, my daughter. Just a glance. Tears rolled down Amaka's cheeks, but she kept her eyes forward, forcing her legs to move. The voice turned angry. Ungrateful child, you belong to me now. Suddenly, hands shot up from the water, grabbing at her legs. Amaka screamed and kicked, trying to break free. Mama Ugo pulled her hard, chanting prayers and tossing protective powder into the river. The hands hissed and vanished. Finally, they made it across. Amaka collapsed on the grass, shaking and breathless. What was that? She asked. Mama Ugo looked back at the river, which was now quiet again. The mirror spirit knows your pain, she said. It uses what you love against you. As the sun began to set, they stood up and faced the hill ahead. The sacred hills were close now, but so was the spirit. The sacred hills of Numoki finally rose before them, tall, wide, and covered in mist. As Amaka and Mama Ugo approached the base, they saw strange symbols carved into the rocks, and the air smelled of old incense and damp earth. It was quiet, too quiet. But then they heard it, a drum, slow, steady, and deep. Dum, dum, dum. It came from somewhere within the hills. Each beat made Amaka's chest tighten. She looked at Mama Ugo, who stopped walking and placed her hand on the ground. This is not good, she whispered. That drum is not for dancing. It is the drum of welcome. The spirit knows we are here. As they began climbing the narrow path leading up the hill, the drum beat grew louder. Birds flew from the trees without warning, and the mist thickened. Amaka could barely see what was in front of her. She held on to Mama Ugo's wrapper tightly. Halfway up the hill, they reached a large rock shaped like a throne. Mama Ugo knelt before it and placed kola nuts on the ground. We must ask permission to enter, she said. This hill is sacred. If we climb without asking, it might throw us back down. Amaka knelt beside her and closed her eyes. Mama Ugo whispered prayers in a tongue older than the village itself. The air grew still, and then the wind answered with a soft sigh. The offering disappeared before their eyes, sucked into the earth. The spirits of the hill have allowed us, Mama Ugo said with relief. They continued upward, but Amaka felt her mark burning again. She looked at her arm. The black ring was now glowing faintly, and tiny lines were crawling out from it, like cracks on glass. Suddenly, a deep voice echoed across the hill. Why do you run from yourself, Amaka? She froze. The voice came from the trees, but also from within her own head. Mama Ugo gripped her arm tightly. Ignore it. It is the mirror again. It is close. Then they saw it. At the top of the hill, a hut made of black stone. In front of it stood an old man in red, his face covered with white paint. The guardian, Mama Ugo whispered. But behind the guardian, in the shadows of the hut, the mirror spirit was waiting, smiling. The old man in red did not move as Amaka and Mama Ugo approached. His body was still as a statue, but his presence was powerful, like the air itself bowed to him. He stood at the entrance of the hut, his face covered with chalk symbols, and his eyes glowing faintly like dying embers. This is the one they call Miri, the guardian, Mama Ugo whispered. He has stood at the hut's entrance for over 100 years. He sees beyond mirrors. He speaks only the truth. The wind around the hill began to spin. Dust swirled. The drumbeat stopped. Miri finally raised his head. Who brings the cursed one here? He asked, his voice slow, deep and heavy. Who dares carry the mark of the twin shadow? Amaka's knees felt weak, but she stepped forward. I didn't mean to. I looked into a mirror at night. I saw something that wasn't me. It keeps following me. It wants to take my place. Miri stared at her, eyes unblinking. You are already half taken. The mark spreads. Soon the spirit will live in both worlds, yours and its own. Please, Amaka begged. Tell us how to stop it. I don't want to be a prisoner in glass. The old man stepped aside and pointed to the black hut behind him. Inside is the Obianuju, the mirror stone. It is the oldest mirror in the land. It sees all spirits, good and bad. If you enter, the stone will show you the truth, what the spirit really wants, and how to defeat it. But Miri raised his hand. There is a price. The mirror stone only shows truth to the one who gives up what they love most. Amaka froze. What does that mean? Miri did not explain. He only said, choose wisely. Once the truth is seen, the path cannot be undone. Suddenly, from the shadow behind the hut, the mirror spirit appeared again. This time it did not speak. It only laughed, a high, broken laugh that echoed like glass cracking. Then it vanished. Miri turned to Amaka one last time. The spirit is inside the hill now. If you do not face it before night falls, it will no longer need a mirror to take you. Amaka stepped forward, heart pounding. I'm ready, she said. And then she entered the hut. The inside of the hut was dark, but not with the darkness of night. It was a deep, heavy darkness, like the kind found inside the earth, where no light had ever touched. As soon as Amaka stepped in, the door behind her closed on its own. The sound echoed like thunder. The air was thick and cold. Her bare feet touched smooth stone, and her fingers brushed the damp walls as she walked. The silence was deep, so deep that she could hear her own heartbeat, and even her breath sounded loud. There were no windows, no candles, just a narrow path leading deeper into the hut. Then, without warning, a faint light appeared ahead. She followed it slowly until she entered a large circular room. At the center stood a tall, black mirror framed with bones and feathers. This was Obianuju, the mirror stone. It didn't reflect her right away. Instead, it shimmered like water, as if it was waiting to decide what to show. A voice echoed in the chamber. Not loud, not soft, just calm. What do you love most? Amaka didn't know where the voice came from, but she answered truthfully. My grandmother, Mama Ugo. The mirror responded instantly. Its surface turned silver and then began to move like liquid. Amaka stepped closer, and her reflection appeared. Only this time, she wasn't standing. She was kneeling beside Mama Ugo, who was lying still on the ground, eyes closed, lifeless. No, Amaka cried. The voice spoke again. To know the truth, the one you love must fall. Tears rolled down her cheeks. There must be another way. The mirror cracked, just a little, a single thin line across the surface. Then the image changed. Now it showed the spirit, the one that looked like her. But it was no longer smiling. It looked scared. It was trapped inside a mirror in a small room, pounding the glass, screaming silently. Suddenly, the whole story flashed before her eyes, fast and clear. Long ago, the spirit had once been a real girl, vain and cruel. She hurt people, lied, betrayed. So a mirror maker trapped her inside a cursed glass, sealing her with a spell. But each time someone looked into a mirror with a dark heart, the spirit gained strength. And now Amaka had looked. But Amaka's heart wasn't dark. That meant there was still hope. If you face her where it all began, the voice whispered, you can break her forever. But it must be your face she sees last. The mirror then went black, and the exit behind her lit up with red flame. Amaka turned, her heart full of fear, but also something stronger. She now knew what she had to do. Amaka stepped out of the hut with her fists clenched and her face set with a new kind of strength. The wind around the sacred hills howled louder than before. The trees below danced wildly, and the sky had turned a deep gray. Mama Ugo rushed to her side. What did the mirror stone show you? She asked, her voice trembling. Amaka's eyes were wide and wet, but steady. It showed me everything. The spirit was once a girl, vain and cruel. A mirror maker sealed her into glass so she could never hurt anyone again. But each time someone with even a little darkness looked at her, she grew stronger. Mama Ugo touched her face gently. And why did she choose you? Amaka swallowed. Because I looked. I was curious. I didn't listen. The old woman nodded slowly. Then how do we end this? She must see me, Amaka said. Not her version, the real me. If she sees herself through my eyes, not through the mirror, she will crack. But it must happen where it started, in my room, where I looked at her the first time. Mama Ugo's eyes widened. That's dangerous. The spirit will be strongest there. I know, Amaka replied, but that's the only way. They began their journey back down the hill, moving quickly through the mist. The mirror spirit didn't try to stop them this time. It was waiting, confident now, hiding behind the glass in Amaka's room, thinking it had already won. When Amaka and Mama Ugo reached their compound, the front door was already open. The air inside was ice cold. The smell of ashes and broken glass filled the air. The mirror in Amaka's room was uncovered, and her reflection stood inside it, grinning wide, eyes glowing red. I knew you would return, the spirit said in her voice. I came to end this, Amaka said. She stepped into the room. The door closed behind her, and the final battle for her face, her soul, her life, had begun. The room was silent, but the air vibrated like a drum about to burst. Amaka stood face to face with the spirit, herself, but not. The mirror no longer separated them. The spirit had stepped out of the glass. It now stood in the middle of the room, bare feet hovering just above the floor, its white wrapper fluttering without wind. You came alone, the spirit said, voice soft but sharp. How brave, or how foolish. I came with the truth, Amaka replied, her voice shaking but strong. You can wear my face, mimic my voice, even steal my memories, but you will never be me. The spirit tilted her head and laughed. Oh, Amaka, I don't want to be you. I want to replace you. You are weak, the spirit whispered. Afraid. You carry guilt and doubt. I am the stronger one. Amaka closed her eyes for a moment. She thought of Mama Ugo, her late mother's voice in the river, of the mirror stone's message. The spirit feeds on fear, but the only way to defeat it was to let it see the real Amaka. I'm not perfect, she said, stepping forward. Yes, I was curious. I didn't listen. I was warned, but I won't run anymore. Amaka took a deep breath and turned toward the mirror. But instead of seeing her reflection, she saw the spirit's image, grinning with sharp teeth and glowing eyes. No, Amaka said firmly. You've looked through the mirror long enough. Now it's your turn to see. With all her strength, Amaka grabbed the small hand mirror that had once belonged to her mother. She turned it toward the spirit, forcing it to see its own face, not through the glass it controlled, but through a real mirror, held by someone who knew who she was. The spirit looked, and for the first time, it screamed. Its face flickered. The red glow faded. The floating body twisted and turned, cracking like glass hit with a hammer. Shards of light shot in every direction as the spirit shrieked in a voice that shook the whole room. And then, silence. The mirror on the wall shattered. The spirit was gone, and Amaka was still standing. The room was quiet, too quiet. No wind, no voices, no movement. Amaka stood still, her hand trembling around the small mirror that had saved her. Around her, pieces of the large mirror lay scattered across the floor, like broken ice, each shard still glowing faintly before dimming to gray. Mama Ugo burst through the door, breathless. Amaka, she called, her eyes scanning the room. Amaka turned slowly. I did it, she whispered, voice weak. She's gone. Mama Ugo rushed forward and held her tightly. You were brave, braver than anyone I've ever known. Something had changed in her. She had faced the mirror, and not everything she saw was left behind. Mama Ugo swept the broken mirror pieces into a clay bowl and buried them behind the house. Let the earth hold what was never meant to walk free, she said. Amaka watched in silence. Her body still ached, and though the mark on her wrist had faded, a faint shadow of it remained, like a bruise on her soul. When she closed her eyes, she could still hear the echo of the spirit's laughter, faint, like something far away but not gone. She turned to Mama Ugo. What if it happens again? What if I forget and look into another mirror at the wrong time? Mama Ugo wrapped an arm around her shoulder. Then you will remember who you are now. You're not the same girl who looked into that mirror. You've seen what lies beneath the surface, and you've come back stronger. They replaced the mirror with a wooden carving of a sun, something the old woman had given them as protection. No mirrors were allowed in the house after that, not even the ones on small hand fans or pots. Water was always stirred before being looked into. Months passed. Life slowly returned to normal in Umeche village. The days were filled with laughter again, with children running barefoot through dusty paths and elders sitting under mango trees, telling old stories. But Amaka had changed. She still laughed. She still helped Mama Ugo with her herbs. But her eyes carried something new, depth, wisdom, a knowing that only comes from facing darkness and walking away with your soul still whole. She never spoke much about what happened. Only Mama Ugo knew the full truth, and they had agreed to keep it that way. Curiosity can be a spark, but when lit in the dark, it can become fire. Some doors should never be opened. Some mirrors should never be trusted. And when you're warned, listen. If you enjoy the story, please like, subscribe, and comment for more